The problem is some athletes don't even feel when they're wasted because they're so used to work hard, work hard, work hard. Yes, pain is always there. You gotta fight the pain. Yeah, you can fight the pain until you have an injury. So these recovery weeks are super, super important. You have to make sure that your athlete is exactly here on race day. This is the only thing you have to make sure works. Unfortunately, a lot of athletes are on race day exactly here because they worked hard. Hello and welcome everybody. Today I would like to talk about the most fundamental training principle out there. And the reason why I talk about it today is that we're very close to peak of season. It's the COVID year and that COVID season is pretty messed up, but there's still some very good regattas. And I see a couple of mistakes being repeated over and over again. And one of these mistakes is to completely forget about how important the rest period is to become fitter and stronger. And not just in terms of muscle gains, having better endurance, also in terms of health preservation. Now, what is supercompensation? Well, the basic principle is that the body, when it's subjected to a certain load, doesn't want to get in that uncomfortable situation again. It's a self-protection mechanism of the body. And in order to make sure it's not subjected to the same uncomfortable situation again, it tries to overcompensate to be fitter and stronger next time. So to avoid a possible life-threatening situation. Sounds harsh, but this is exactly what's the reasoning behind it. The idea about supercompensation is that you do training, your performance capability drops. So at the end of the training session, you're pretty wasted. And then if you give it enough time and rest, your body supercompensates, which means it does a bit more than is actually required. So if everything goes according to plan, at the end of the recovery period, you're actually stronger than you were when you did your first training session. So far so good. And this is not only true with muscle gains, with aerobic capacities, with your VO2 max, it's also the same with the stability of your joints, of your tendons, of your ligaments, of your entire body. Also bone density is affected by it. However, in different speeds, different intervals, and different times. And this is what makes it challenging. Now, if you follow a training plan that prescribes certain intensities and does not really take into account where you are right now, your supercompensation curve may be all over the place. A classic way of overtraining would look this way. You do a training session, you become weaker naturally. Then you don't give it enough rest time because the training plan says you got to do this and that the next time. Otherwise, you're off the team, you're too weak, you're not strong, or it's self-doubts. I have to do more. And then after a short recovery, your actual performance capability will drop again. And then you think, oh, I'm still not strong enough. I have to work harder. Probably hard work is always a good solution. Now, you've worked hard here, you've worked hard there, and there. What's the result? You're weaker than before. Now, just gotta give it enough rest now. Yes, now that you sit here and watch this in theory, of course. But when you're right in there, emotionally involved, or you simply are afraid to be kicked off the team, or that you don't meet the performance standards of a certain a crew, then it is very likely you will make a mistake and train harder again, and then this happens. So you see, the progress is pretty clear. It's a downward spiral. And the problem about this is that there's only one way out, and it means recovery. But recovery is the last thing you want to do because you want to work hard, right? The problem is if you have a one-size-fits-all training plan, then it is very likely that either these workouts will be too simple, too easy, or too hard for you. But it is very likely that these workouts will not be right on target. What happens if a workout is too easy? An easy workout will only trigger you slightly and only create slight supercompensation. Or the other option, you do a massive workout and you take a long break. Your level of performance will almost be the same as it was before the training session. So you see, it's all about timing. And this is exactly where You have to understand how your body works. And there are different athletes, different types of athletes. One of the most important distinctions to make is between slow twitch fiber athlete, which means more the endurance types of athletes, and fast twitch fiber athlete, which are more the explosive types of athletes. And the way they react to certain loads is pretty different. And also the things they need to recover quicker. Let me give an example. Let's say we have an explosive type of athlete and we do a long endurance session around the anaerobic threshold. Anaerobic threshold for my athletes is around 3, 4, and 5. And for everybody who is not on my team, it's a pace where you build up just about as much lactate as the body can reuse, but if you increase the intensity just a bit more, you will accumulate a lot of lactate and then you can't hold the pace too much longer. So it's probably around a stroke rate for an explosive athlete, a stroke rate of 20 to 23 with 80% power. For an endurance type of athlete, this may mean a stroke rate of 21 to 24, even 25 with 80% power. And the reason why I make a distinction here is because explosive athletes can kill themselves with 20 strokes a minute and endurance athletes can't. Endurance athletes are very well capable of hitting the same speed all the time. You can add, let's say bench pull, they can do bench pull of 80 kilos and they can do it 20 times. But ask me to do 81 kilos, impossible, not even once. That's the extreme example of an endurance athlete. Explosive athlete, happy to do 100 kilo once, but ask him to do 100 kilo 3 times, no way. These are the differences. Now, we have an explosive athlete here, fast twitch fiber athlete. We have a pretty hefty training session around the anaerobic threshold level. So this would be 90 minutes total, a bit on the bike of that, and we have 2-3 intervals of 10 minutes with the desired stroke rate and the desired intensity. The next day, that person will probably not be fully recovered, because for an explosive type of athlete who has not been trained to rowing standards long enough, because in rowing you need both. You need fast twitch and slow twitch, so it doesn't matter from which corner you come from, and it's not like one is more talented than the other one. So for the explosive type of athlete, you need to count more recovery time. That is important. For the endurance type of athlete, an endurance load, even if it's like the same exhaustion level, will lead to a quicker recovery. While for the explosive type of athlete, the full recovery may be 12 to 24 hours later. Now, if both athletes did the same thing, only talking about this endurance training, then the explosive type of athlete will probably go into a downward spiral pretty quickly and simply be wasted, have an injury, whatever. For the endurance athlete, perfectly fine, if the intensity was actually the right one for that person. This is why it's important to judge the intensities a lot with perceived load. Perceived load is more accurate than actually heart rate and lactate. And I've done a lot of comparison tests between heart rate and lactate tests and perceived load. And interestingly, the perceived load is almost, if not more accurate than lactate. Now, what if we do the next day, say both are recovered, and the next day we do a super decent strength training. It supersets, let's say 20 reps max with 3 exercises. So one exercise 8 reps, the other one say 6 reps and 14, another 6 reps, the third exercise. So for the explosive athlete, perfect. That explosive athlete would basically dip deep into nirvana, as to be completely wasted. On the other hand side, it's something that suits that person very well, because explosivity is absolutely the person thing. So the recovery curve will probably be a bit quicker. And then as a coach, you say, all right, we had now 2 to 3 hard training days. Let's take a day off. A day off is gold for explosive athletes. They recover super quickly. Days off work very, very well in my experience for explosive athletes. Now, the endurance athlete is equally wasted, probably more, and needs more time to recover. If you then shut off the volume, the endurance type of athlete will have a problem. It needs volume to get the circulation flowing. There is no scientific backup. This is my experience as a coach, all right? You have to try it out yourself. And the endurance athlete will probably be just about recovered on the next training day, when the explosive athlete will be super fit. You see where this goes? You have to treat people differently. Not everybody is the same, and people need different training plans. Now back to supercompensation. There's something that's called the combined effect, and the combined effect is usually a training camp effect. So you have one load, the next day, the next load, the next day, the next load. So the overall capacity drops and drops and drops. And then, of course, you have these quick recovery cycles in between, but the overall capacity drops. It's the performance capability is simply less than the beginning of the training camp. And then you either do a recovery period, or you do you take a couple days off. And then you find you don't get the same effect. So you don't have the same amount of recovery as you have in terms of load, but probably right here, this is where you find yourself. The problem is, and also with high altitude training, you have to be very, very careful, because there is a fine line between tough and crazy. To cite one of my favorite movies, it's called Remember the Titans, in case you know that.
Go. There's a fine line between tough and crazy, and you're flirting with it. All right, get some water.
So there's a fine line between tough and crazy, and on a training camp you always have to flirt with this fine line. But you got to make sure you monitor also the recovery. So this is why it takes individualized training plans and individualized training monitoring. I work with teams, I do their training planning, I work with the coaches, and the coaches work with the athletes and help these guys to monitor. The most important thing here is to understand that eventually, after you had the combined load effect, that you need to find the right time when people are ready to take the next load. Because if you wait too long, you will lose some of that again. And simultaneously, there are a lot of different supercompensation curves going on. You know, you have the muscular side, you do have the endurance side. Maybe for the endurance it was not as bad. Maybe the endurance levels actually went up during the camp, you don't know. Then you have the mental capacity. The same thing, you know, mental toughness is something you can learn. So as a coach, you always have to keep in mind all these different aspects and read athletes like a book, and you have to understand how it affects them, you know. And there are also recovery speed increases. So things like clean out sessions I use quite a lot. My athletes know that term. So if you find clean out session, you know that the day before it was probably pretty tough, and the day afterwards a clean out session, then it's an easy session. So this helps us to become fitter again. The moral of the story in this video is to understand that hard training alone won't get the job done, and a one-size-fits-all training plan won't get the job done. You have to read yourself, or get somebody who reads you, what you need in order to get the supercompensation at the right point of time, and to have the supercompensation at its max at a race. Before I finish off this video, one final thought on how to peak for a year. A training week usually consists of a load, a clean out session, and an easy session. Then you have the next load, a clean out session, and an easy session. This I'm just drawing here the cardiovascular curve. And sometimes during peak of season you would have something like a load, an easy session, a load, another load to simulate the double load of a race, and then you have a double recovery session. Sometimes we would have weeks where we use combined loading. So you use a load and another load, a bit of recovery, and another load and another load, and the end of the week that person is done. All right? It's okay. If you know what you're doing, that's absolutely fine. And then you're going to give that person the next week time to recover. Become fit and strong and fit and strong and fit and strong. The problem is some athletes don't even feel when they're wasted because they're so used to work hard, work hard, work hard. Yes, pain is always there. You got to fight the pain. Yeah, you can fight the pain until you have an injury. So these recovery weeks are super, super important. If you structure mesocycles, if we talk about mesocycles of 6 weeks, you could have either a load week and another load week and then a recovery week, or you could have something like a load week and a recovery week, a load week and a recovery week. It really depends on what the athlete can take. If an athlete can take 2 load weeks, it's fine. If it can't take 2 load weeks, we'll take an off week in between. And in terms of mesocycles, you have to get these curves right simultaneously. You have to get the strength on time, you have to get the stability of tendons, ligaments, of cartilages on time, and you have to get the cardiovascular development on time, so you have a huge body of aerobic capacity, but you also have the high intensities on time. You have to make sure that your athlete is exactly here on race day. This is the only thing you have to make sure works. Unfortunately, a lot of athletes are on race day exactly here because they worked hard. And it's not about hard work only, it's about smart work. You have to know what you're doing. You have to have somebody who shows you what to do, or you have enough experience in training planning yourself. If you don't have a coach, if you have no training plan, how can you know when it's time to recover? A good rule of thumb is to make sure you take more rest at the beginning than you think you need. Start with very small, very short sessions, especially if you're a comeback athlete, but make sure you do these consistently. Document what you're doing or talk to somebody else how you're feeling. Other people may reflect differently how you said you were feeling than you actually yourself. Always make sure unload frequently. Don't load with intensities. No. You want to unload frequently and sometimes take it easy. If you know you're an explosive athlete, take a couple days off every week or take even a week off every month in extreme situations. If you're training for super high competitiveness, then maybe take off 3 days per month or 4 days per month. So you have 1 off day per week. If you're more the endurance type of athlete, keep the volume up, but keep the intensity low to recover. If you want to find out more about how to get your training plan, go to rmtraining.com and join one of the programs. If you have any further questions, please put them in the comment section below. I'm happy to answer them all. And if there are many questions about this and more interest to talk more about training planning, I will make another video. So please let me know in the comments. Until then, I wish you all the best, ladies and gents. I hope this was helpful. See you soon. Bye-bye.